Yeah, so I think that's quite funny, and it does bear out the question of, so the Klingons are stuck, or committed to this war. Would you show up with something like Camarag or Cavort as a way to take the more expensive Watchers out of the line of fire?
I think it would probably be a case of not casting any allusions to any kind of relatively current situations. So you kind of you make your big spear thrust with your latest and greatest units, and then as you find things start to bog down, I mean, you think about it in terms of almost like cavalry, whether it be medieval knights charging or even Napoleonic era cavalry. They're really, really expensive, usually a top of the line equipment. Really good shock troops, blasting through formations and everything. But the minute the fighting bogs down into just standard hand-to-hand melee, they actually suffer disproportionately high casualties.
Yes.
And that's when you want your regular grunt infantry. You want to be able to pull back the expensive shiny stuff.
Yes.
And I just wonder, maybe that's when you have the Camarags and the Cavorts and etc. brought in, because you've smashed through the outer Cardassian lines and some of the inner Cardassian lines with your Vorchers. They've done their good attack, heavy attack cruiser thing, and now they find themselves, like we discussed in the previous episode, they're stuck. They're getting ambushed. They're getting counter-ambushed, and suddenly the losses add up very quickly, and you can see someone sitting there going, but if we pull the Vorchers, or most of them, away from the front line, we keep them in a ready reserve to respond to any big counter moves, and we throw in all our older reserve ships, well, they can, a Camarag or a Cavort can ambush a Cardassian freighter convoy just as easily as a Vorcha can, and if it happens to be, a highly engineered counter ambush by the 15th Order or something, then oh no, we lost a Camarag.
Yes.
How tragic. However, will we go on? As opposed to an actually valuable Vorcha got shot up.
Yeah, I mean, you're not, because at that point also you're not looking to decisively win matchups or engagements. You're looking to kind of just keep it going. If you are very reliant on a Vorcha can take out a Galor, but if that's no longer what you're actually trying to do, if you're not trying to punch through those Galor lines, if you're instead going after other strategic targets, there's not a whole point of putting that at stake. And okay, yes, Camarag, it's not going to be able to take on a Galor, but
the Cardassians may not have that many Galors left.
Yes, or the ones that they do have, they're probably husbanding just as much as the Klingons are.
Yeah. Because we do see a change in the appearance of the Galor after Way of the Warrior. By the time we get to the Dominion War, the Galors we see in service there they're noticeably different from the TNG Galor and the early DS9 Galor. So you could even make an argument maybe the Cardassians actually lost the bulk of their main fleet fighting the Klingons.
Yes.
And they've gone, okay, here's a nice, quick and ready, budget version that we can spam out in the aftermath, and that's the Dominion War Galore.
Yeah, I mean, the real life production reasons is because you had the physical model Galore, but then for those battle sequences they wanted the CG.
Yeah.
They do still intersplice the old model. I'm just thinking the best example is whenever they show shots of the occupied Deep Space Nine, and you have a Galore docked at the docking rings.
But then if you want to make a headcanon and explain why you have these different models,
that's
a handful of remaining Galores that were stuck in Defense of Cardassia Prime, and they occasionally pop up, and then you have this post-war mass production knockoff discount.
Yes.
The Wish.com Galore.
The Galore 3-star or whatever.
And so at that point, if the main Cardassian fleet is essentially been destroyed or is hiding around Cardassia Prime waiting for this final offensive, especially if, again, referring back to what we said back on the beach, if the Klingons forces have a higher proportion of Vorcha compared to the Great House fleets, and the Great House fleets are reliant maybe on some of the older stuff. It kind of, again, it matches up, because then Gowron's going, right, well, I'm going to keep my high-tech, modern Klingon defense force, the thing that keeps me in power, I'm going to keep that behind the line. And it's two birds with one stone, because I tell the Great Houses, go out, have fun, kill a bunch of Cardassians, and they all surge out with their museum fleet collections of Camarags and Cavorts and D7s, and and Gowron's like, look, they're all happy fighting each other and not really accomplishing much.
Not accomplishing much, and weakening themselves so that they can't possibly threaten me again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategy, and definitely works for Gowron, because he is sort of established to be very sneaky in that way. I mean, it's that thing, it's like with Gowron in Next Generation, when he's first introduced, he's introduced as this kind of wild card when no one really knows what this guy, and he's ostensibly an outsider, you might say, and he's going to come in and he's going to, quote unquote, drain the swamp or whatever. And then, of course, he just ends up sort of just as much embroiled in it, or creating his own, swamp of corruption and political manipulation.
I think in some ways Gowron is different, but I mean, when you look at Duras is okay. He's willing to literally backstab people to get what he wants, but when it comes down to it, he is a little bit more of a traditional Klingon, especially when you consider this is early TNG, so much of Klingon culture that we've seen at this point has been a bit of TNG and a lot of TOS, where they can be sneaky, but they'll backstab you to weaken you, and then they'll stab you in the face to finish you off, and that's very much Duras' style. He tries to weaken everyone with sneaky death, but then when it comes to when Worf teleports onto his ship and is just like, face me, Duras, Gowron would be like, how dare you insult me by coming aboard my ship. He would dissemble and try and get Worf to just be shocked. Whereas Duras is like, oh yeah, bring it.
He kind of still falls afoul of that, and that's probably why Gowron was able to stay in power, because he knew how to manipulate that.
And you can see that the older school Klingons don't really have an idea of how to counter that, because you see again, like when Martok is being run into the ground, Martok's just like, I know exactly what he's doing, and Gowron knows exactly what he's doing, but there's nothing I can do about it, because within the Klingon Code of Honor, I have to keep doing it. Until I die. And everyone in the Federation is just like, but why though?
But why?
And everyone's like, but honor. And you can, Gowron is this outsider. He's worked out the honor code system, and he's forcing everyone else to work inside it whilst he works outside of it. So in some ways he is an outside wildcard, just not the outside wildcard everyone in the Federation hoped he was.
Because instead of him being sort of someone who was going to increase the relationship, it's more that he just sort of exploits it for his own gain. And you get the impression, you looking at again, if you look at base canon, because Kempek led for a long time by Klingon standards, but that's actually not that long. Like it's a couple decades, 3 decades or so. And obviously part of that was signing a treaty of alliance with the Federation and everything, because they were probably acutely aware of just how vulnerable they were, because you basically have the first Khitomer Accords where they say, okay, we're no longer at a Cold War, but then you still have to have that second process, which is caused by the Enterprise C, which one demonstrates, these Federation guys, they aren't so bad, and two, we're really, really vulnerable right now. And I think the effect that you get when,
for such a key incident, you don't actually hear that much about what actually happened at Narendra 3. Like, the actual battle it's kind of the noodle incident, isn't it? It's like we hear all about it, but also not. We hear that it happened and how important it was. But the sense I always got, especially looking at the broader Klingon culture of the TNG DS9 era, was perhaps that the Klingons had maybe up until that point they'd had the impression that yes, the Federation could fight, but that the Federation would only fight if there was no choice whatsoever, if they had the either technical or technological superiority or the numerical superiority. Sorry, some idiot just decided he's going to cut in front of us for no reason. But that if the circumstances didn't favour them and they didn't have to be there, then they would leave. Which, I mean, that's also just to us, well, I suppose to us as humans, that's logical tactics.
Yes.
Like, if you don't have to fight there and you're going to die, if you do, well, then you fall back and you fight somewhere else. And then you have Narendra 3, it's like 3 Romulan, well, they say warbirds of some description.
Yeah, is it 3 or is it 5?
I thought it was 3, or maybe the Enterprise took down 3. 3 is a number I remember coming from it, but whatever the case, you have the Enterprise C. It's massively outnumbered. It's a Klingon colony, so at that point they don't have any kind of mutual defense pact or anything. So from the Klingon perspective, it's like, well, the Federation ship is clearly going to lose. They don't have any obligation to be there. And so, therefore, logically, the Federation, being the honourless dogs that they are, will retreat and leave all the Klingons to die.
Yes.
And the Enterprise C doesn't. It sticks around and goes down fighting. And they're like, oh, hang on. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe the Federation does know how to fight, because it fights like a Klingon ship would fight. Oh, yeah, a bunch of Romulans. Well, victory or Tovacor. Either is a good option.
And I think that's, so they kind of understand that, and it's almost like when Gowron declares his war on the Federation. He's kind of forgotten that, and possibly because he's since seen the Cardassian border wars and stuff like that, and he's like, they're gonna just concede.
Yeah,
it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. We'll just roll in there, say it's ours, and they'll go, oh, okay then.
Yeah, even if they're not happy about it, they don't have any particular love for the Cardassians, so they'll just let us do what we want. Yes.
Or even like when he initiates the invasion of Federation territories in the Arcanus sector, and I wonder if he was thinking they're not going to do anything. This is the Federation we're talking about. They gave up so much to the Cardassians, so why wouldn't they do the same with us?
Yeah. We're stronger, they owe us, etc., etc. Yeah. Although it does actually, I know this is again a slight tangent off of the Klingon-Cardassian War, but it does make me wonder if there were contingents of Starfleet that maybe got along a lot better with the Klingons than other portions.
Yes.
Because, one of the Federation's great strengths is that they're made up of numerous member species, but we know that the Andorians were very aggressively expansionist. The Tellarites are fairly aggressive. 24th century humans as a rule are not.
No.
But there are still the occasional example, and the Vulcans probably would, a Vulcan ship would probably hate to be assigned to the Klingons. They're the complete antithesis of them. But it does make me wonder by the end of the Dominion War, if there were, some human and a lot of Andorian and Tellarite and other species captains were like, yeah, great, assign us to fight with the Klingons, because they could let themselves a little bit more off the Starfleet leash.
Yes.
And if anyone questions, why did you get quite so eager about chasing down every last Jem'Hadar in that system? They're like, well, once the Klingons get going, they get going, and we have to support our allies. So yeah, we took our ships on a madcap chase through an asteroid field to make sure there was not a single Jem'Hadar left alive. And probably somewhere else on the other side of the war, there was probably some Vulcan man ship who was just like, thank goodness we're not anywhere near the Klingons. And yeah, these Romulan allies of ours are a little bit emotional, which is a bit grating, but they're very logical about when they fight and when they withdraw.
Yes, yeah, that definitely would bear out. I mean, I thought the other thing you were going to mention was that I wonder to what extent there would be resentment between Federation, especially early in the Dominion War, between Federation and Klingon crews, because because that war they had. I mean, I know it was over very quickly, but they also, like, from the sounds of it, they killed a fair number of Federation crews.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that people are just going to forgive that instantly.
Yeah, because we know Sisko was very upset when he heard those Klingons boasting about killing the Bolian captain that he'd gone to the academy with. But then, I think this is again. It would be. It's gradually made very clear, especially in DS9 and subsequent franchises of Star Trek, that you have the overall Federation ethos, but a lot of individuals and a reasonable number of species are not really so fully engaged with it as perhaps everyone would have you believe in TNG.
Yes.
So yeah, there probably would be a lot of people who'd be like, oh no, we had such an era of peace and we really believed in the Federation's ideal of peace, and you Klingons went and shattered it, and so we hate you. But there would also be, especially in a service as large as we see Starfleet is in the Dominion War, there will have been people who, they didn't fight in that border war and they didn't know anybody who did, or if they did, then they didn't know anyone who died. And equally, I can see a lot of, not a lot, but a small percentage of Starfleet officers and ships who may be looking at the whole situation and going, yeah, actually that was a good, not necessarily a good thing that we had to fight, but it was a good wake-up call to persuade Starfleet to be a little bit more military. Yeah, because you look at Season 1, Season 2 DS9, which is basically Season 6, Season 7 TNG, and the attitude, like that whole, I mean, that again referencing that section from DS9 where Sisko's upset. It's like the Klingons like, oh yeah, we boarded the bridge and the Bolian captain was still sitting in his chair, and I was just like, that's classic TNG. Yes. It's like, I'm sitting in my captain's chair, there's reports of boarders on my ship, I'm not arming myself. Yes. I'm not doing. I'm just sitting here wearing my Starfleet issue pajamas right up until someone comes and lets my head off my neck.
Yes.
Like that is peak TNG behaviour. But then you hear about people like some stuff like what O'Brien says about his experiences in the Cardassian border wars. There's probably a bunch of people that you don't see in the series who are just like, yeah, great, we actually get to fight for a change. Yeah. And it's something that's always perplexed me, because we see by TNG it's easy to replicate stuff and they have site-to-site transport, and I've always thought, if I was in that era as a Starfleet captain and I've been told, right, you're going to fight the Klingons, it's like, well, what do the Klingons like to do? Batter your shield down on board. And okay, well, maybe people don't like wearing anything other than your Starfleet pajama uniform all the time, but if you're going to get a bunch of lunatics with close combat weapons and body armor boarding your ship, my first reaction would be to put a program into the computer, like, computer, armor please, and just have it transport a suit of armor and a sword. I'm like, come on then, let's go.
And it's like that's I'm going to give Star Trek Discovery some credit here, because they give them the away team tactical vests.
Yes.
And you have that a little bit actually in the movies, the original series movies. You have the guys in the football armor, the brown football armor coming in every so often. It's and also that makes plenty of sense, because they were probably squaring up to fight the Klingons. Yeah. And they knew that was almost certainly a thing. I mean, taking it back to the Klingon-Cardassian War, I'm sort of considering the boarding actions, because I mean, Cardassians probably don't like melee combat. No. Apart from when they're just beating up innocent Bajorans. that, you know, it's not as fun as that.
Well, I mean, we see that in when they're defending the Detapa Council.
Yes.
Garak and Dukat, they're literally just standing there with pistols shooting everybody who comes down the corridor.
Yes, they're like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
In that one scene.
Yeah,
Like,
and it's like I suppose it actually shows that they have a real distaste, because only right at the end are they getting into melee combat. And
yes.
even then, it's like they're doing the classic Star Trek hammer punch and
Yes.
double fist and everything. And meanwhile, on the bridge of DS9, there's like half of the bridge crew have mechliths and batleths
Yes.
and are just going to town with the Klingons.
Yeah, they've either ripped a batleth out of someone's hand or whatever, or they're using their martial arts.
Yeah, and the Cardassians just like, no, we can't do anything as beneath us as melee combat.
Well, because one thing I've always thought with looking at the Cardassian uniform, they have that, they go from the TNG, early TNG, they have that armor bodysuit,
which is crash helmet,
which looks very uncomfortable, to the DS9 uniform, where they basically have sort of leggings, a vest, and then that big rubber carapace.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that might actually help if a Klingon goes trying to
if it's made of something solid, that might stop a
batleth,
blade,
or at least stop it cutting you so deep.
Yes.
Because it's mentioned. I want to say that there is shown in some illustration somewhere a Cardassian melee weapon, but I can't ever recall actually seeing one used.
I think I remember what you're talking about. I think it's in a concept art sketch somewhere when they were looking at. If I'm right, I think it's in one of the Eagle Moss magazines where they were showing a bunch of concept art for the Cardassians circa the Dominion War, and they were thinking do we upgrade the Cardassian uniforms to show that they're at war, and the Jem'Hadar are kind of fighting alongside them and everything, and there's a bunch of potential stuff, and then they were just like, but we've also got a ton of the existing props, so
yeah. I mean, that's the thing, and that's also why, for example, in the flashback episodes when DS9 is under occupation, they don't get the TNG body armor uniform out, because they presumably only had 3 of those things.
Yes. And no one wanted to wear them afterwards.
No one wanted to wear them properly. Whereas, yes, I mean, as makeup jobs go, I can't remember. Obviously clear that Mark Alimo was very happy to get shot of that makeup in season 7.
Yes.
It's look, everyone, I have a human face.
Yeah. Can you imagine? It's he just shows up out of habit 3 hours before shooting begins to the makeup trailer, and then 15 minutes later, having applied the Bajoran nose, they're just off you go. He's what?
Oh,
now what do I do?
I just twiddle my thumbs for a little bit.
Yeah.